Hi, my name is Alexis, and I'm 29 years old. I split my work between home and the office. My husband, Bruce, who's also 29, really loves his mom, Doris, but Doris often treats me badly. Even with these challenges, Bruce and I recently celebrated our second wedding anniversary, and I'm proud of how we've managed our relationship. Work has become a safe place for me, giving me a break and leading to several promotions, which isn't common for women in my field. Right now, I'm on a business trip in Europe, attending important meetings. During one meeting, my phone, which was on silent, started vibrating a lot. It was unusual, so I thought it might be an emergency, especially after seeing 5 missed calls from Doris. Worried, I stepped out to call her back. Just as I was about to, she called again. "Hello, Alexis, where are you?" she asked, sounding annoyed. I didn't like her tone, but I answered anyway. "Hi, Doris. How are you? Is everything okay? Where are you?" she repeated, clearly impatient. Even though she was being irritating, I was in the middle of something important and didn't want to argue. "I'm sorry, Doris, didn't Bruce tell you? I'm in a meeting on a business trip. Can we talk later?" I said gently. "Bruce mentioned it, but what are you doing leaving your house and husband alone? Come back home immediately," she demanded. As usual, her demands were sudden and unreasonable. "I'm sorry, Doris, but I'm busy with something crucial and can't leave," I started to explain, but she cut me off. "You're so controlling, even though you're just Bruce's wife. I don't care about your excuses. Come home right now." Her words were harsh, but I had to stay calm for the sake of my job. Today was turning out to be more important than I expected. "Do you realize what today is?" I asked, confused. Doris, with a slight smirk, revealed, "We're celebrating my 62nd birthday today." Her tone was a mix of triumph and expectation. This surprised me because I thought her birthday was later in the month. It was even more surprising since I was on a business trip. My husband and I had planned a special dinner at a fancy restaurant to celebrate her milestone birthday later on. I was getting tired of Doris's constant attempts to control things, which seemed to get worse every year, especially when she knew I was busy with important work. "As I mentioned, I'm currently away on business, so I won't be able to make it back home," I explained calmly. "That's amusing," she replied sarcastically. "I spoke to Bruce earlier, and he's taken the day off for me. All the relatives will be there, but you, Alexis, are always buried in work. You seem so detached. How do you think that makes your husband's family feel?" Her words were meant to hurt, and I knew if I kept talking, her sarcasm would only get worse. Since I was still in an important meeting, I had no choice but to end the conversation. "I'm sorry, but I can't attend your 62nd birthday celebration," I said. Doris's tone suddenly changed. She took a deep breath, clearly frustrated. "Fine then, I won't consider you part of the family anymore. Don't bother coming back. It's like a divorce." "Bruce deserves better," she declared, her words sharp and painful. Her harsh remarks left me both angry and upset, but I refused to argue over the phone. "All right, we'll discuss this when I get back." "I'm sorry, but I need to go now," I replied. Doris snapped back, "What's with that attitude? I told you not to come back. I'll just talk to Bruce myself," and then she hung up. Drained from the interaction with my mother-in-law, I returned to my meeting, taking a deep breath after 3 more days of back-to-back meetings. I finally headed home, feeling angry and frustrated the entire way because of the fight with Doris. I barely remember the drive. When I opened the front door and called out, I heard my husband, Bruce, say, "Welcome back," in a tired voice. I took off my heels and walked into the living room, leaving my luggage by the entrance. There, surrounded by cardboard boxes, was Bruce, sweating as he sealed them with tape. "What's with all the boxes?" I asked, curious. Bruce explained that the boxes were packed with my things. He told me that during Doris's 62nd birthday celebration, the day she called me, she announced to everyone that I had ignored her birthday and been rude on the phone. She even told the relatives that she wanted me divorced and sent back to my parents' house because I wasn't a good match for her son. This was typical of my mother-in-law, so I asked Bruce for more details. "And then what happened? Did your mother tell you to get a divorce and you just agreed to it?" "No, I didn't exactly agree," Bruce replied, sounding exhausted. "But she insisted that I pack up your stuff." I felt cornered. What was I supposed to do? He stopped packing and looked defeated. "What do you mean you didn't argue with your mother? Does this mean you're okay with the idea of us getting a divorce?" I asked, feeling confused and frustrated. Bruce then shared that his father, Russell, had also sided with Doris, telling him, "If Doris is upset, it'll be hard on you. Best to just do what she says." So Bruce had reluctantly gone along with the idea of a divorce. I was shocked at how easily Bruce seemed to accept his mother's decision. "What is wrong with your family?" I wondered aloud. "Your father is controlled by your mother, and you just blindly follow her too." It felt like no one was on my side. Finally, Bruce said, "What my mother decides is final. It's only until she calms down and things settle. This divorce isn't real. I'll come for you when things are better," he added, looking at me with pleading eyes. I wished he would direct that pleading toward his mother instead. How could a grown man like Bruce be so afraid of his mother? I thought, feeling a mix of disappointment and disbelief. It seemed like there was no saving this situation. I almost felt ashamed, wondering what I had ever seen in him. As I thought about everything, I realized that maybe this was an unexpected chance for freedom. Staying with Bruce meant constantly dealing with Doris's hostility and her endless talk about divorce. Maybe separating was actually a blessing in disguise. I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself, and living alone wouldn't be a problem. With this new clarity, I faced Bruce and said firmly, "Let's go ahead with the divorce." Afterward, I called Doris. It took several tries, but she finally answered. "Hello," Doris said. I responded softly, "As you wish, we're getting a divorce." Doris's voice was unnaturally cheerful as she replied, "Yes, please leave. Finally, you realize you're not good enough for Bruce. I'm so relieved. Don't worry, I'll find him a new wife who is obedient, pretty, and nice to her in-laws." Her words were full of a misplaced sense of victory as she added, "I'm sure Bruce will be just fine. I'll take care of him until he finds his next wife, so you don't need to worry about that," Doris said, dripping with sarcasm. After hearing enough of her attitude, I told her, "Well, don't misunderstand. It's not just about you." Still feeling good about herself, Doris snapped back, "Oh, you're just a sore loser. Don't worry about me or Bruce, Alexis. I've got the divorce papers from the city office and gave them to Bruce. Don't forget to sign them." Then, without another word, she hung up. Bruce, who had overheard my conversation, looked strangely relieved, which made me wonder if he really understood what was happening. "By the way, does your mother know you're actually a full-time house husband?" I asked. "How could I tell her that?" he replied, his tone becoming serious. "My mother is obsessed with the idea that I'm a high-ranking employee at a big company, right?" I nodded, thinking about his behavior. I realized that Bruce had never been honest with Doris. At home, he wore old sweatshirts, but whenever he had to meet her, he'd put on a suit and pretend to be at work whenever she called. Doris had proudly announced at her birthday party that Bruce was such a devoted son, taking time off just to be there. She also bragged about his supposed status, claiming he could easily find a more obedient and attractive wife than me. This facade, kept up for appearances, was part of the strange dynamics that had brought our relationship to this point. The truth would likely come out once our divorce was finalized, but Doris, who thought so highly of her son, would probably never expect that Bruce was no longer working at the prestigious company he used to be at. In fact, Bruce had left his job about a year ago. What Doris saw as her elite, high-status son was now an unemployed, full-time house husband. Bruce's departure from his job came after a big mistake that led to a demotion, a pay cut, and a formal apology. He likely kept this hidden from his mother, fearing her reaction. The setback had a huge impact on him, especially given Doris's tendency to coddle him. The mere thought of returning to an office environment and facing the consequences of his mistake made him extremely anxious and sick. At first, he tried to manage by reporting his absences and requesting paid leave, but eventually he stopped calling in altogether. As his unauthorized absences piled up, he was fired. Now, without any plans to find a new job, Bruce relied heavily on my income. He hadn't told Doris any of this, knowing she would be furious and disappointed. I felt a bit of regret knowing I wouldn't get to see Doris's reaction when she found out about her son's situation after I left. I imagined she would be utterly shocked, maybe even extremely upset, but that was no longer my concern. When Bruce handed me the divorce papers, he mentioned they were just a way to calm his mother down. "Okay," I said, taking in the information. I quickly filed the papers and signed a lease for a new apartment, moving out as soon as I could. A month later, to my surprise, Doris called. Even though I thought I had cut ties for good, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "What do you want now? Aren't you happy to be rid of me?" I asked, with a hint of sarcasm in my voice. "You're still the same. Just listen to me," Doris replied, her tone unchanged. She started talking about Bruce. She revealed that since I had left, she had visited Bruce's apartment multiple times to help with chores, only to find him lounging around in his room each time, with no signs of going to work or being sick. Suppressing a laugh, I replied casually, "Well, Bruce is like that because he has no intention of working again." Doris, seemingly unaware of her role in the situation, shockingly asked, "Alexis, can you do something about it?" "Why should I? You didn't want me in your family and wanted nothing to do with me," I retorted. It was so typical of her to ask for help only when it suited her, after treating me badly for so long. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as I realized just how much of a mess she had made for herself. Doris then questioned me, trying to shift the blame onto me. "I was wondering if you said something to Bruce before you left." It was astonishing how she was trying to make me the bad guy, ignoring the real issues with her son. "Really, Doris?" I replied, incredulous at her insinuation. "You think I married Bruce just for a luxurious life? Why would the divorce hurt if that were true? She looked at me suspiciously, as if she believed I had married Bruce just for his wealth. Are you kidding me? I thought to myself, amazed at how delusional she was. I was the one supporting Bruce financially throughout our marriage. It was me providing for him, I continued, feeling frustrated. Because of Bruce, I couldn't even afford to live extravagantly. Should I consider asking for alimony? Doris was shocked by my statement. How dare you make up something like that, Alexis? You just forgot to ask for alimony, didn't you? Bruce has a higher income and position than you. Don't be so unreasonable. If you want money, Bruce can pay whatever you want. After all, he's a high-level employee at a major company, she retorted, sticking to her false belief. Perhaps Bruce hadn't told her the truth. I didn't want to seem like I was gossiping, but I saw an opportunity to set the record straight. Your proud son is a full-time house husband. He quit his job a long time ago, I revealed. You're lying, Doris shouted, her voice so loud it hurt my ears. I pulled the phone away and suggested, why don't you check with his company? You'll find out who's telling the truth. There was a long silence. Then, with a much softer tone, Doris stammered, well, what if that's true? How are we going to manage? I can't support my son on just my pension, and no one will want to marry him if he's unemployed. What are we going to do? I couldn't help but grin at her sudden change of heart. What shall we do? I echoed her words, amused. After a pause, she mumbled something to someone beside her. Then, in a completely altered tone, she pleaded, Hey, Alexis, will you please come back home? Her sudden shift puzzled me, but I replied firmly, no, we're already divorced. I wouldn't come back to your family if heaven and earth turned upside down. The finality in my voice marked the end of that chapter as I moved on from the complicated ties that had bound me. As I was speaking to Doris, a commotion erupted in the background. Someone was shouting. It sounded like Bruce. His voice cut through. I told you I'd come for you when things settled down. Doris quickly responded, yes, you could remarry my son if you wanted. What are you talking about? I asked, baffled and firm. No way, I wouldn't do it for the world. Don't joke about this. Thanks, but seriously no. I made it clear to Doris that I had no interest in rekindling anything with her son or getting involved in any more toxic dynamics. I was done with someone who was overly devoted to his mother. I did what you asked, so please stop changing your mind, Doris retorted, but the tension was obvious even through the phone. There's a bit of verbal sparring here. It's not like you should take my words so seriously. You've been quite dismissive, haven't you? She added. I didn't think you'd go through with divorcing my son, she continued, her tone revealing her surprise at my firm rejection. In response to Doris' excuses, I said, well, I was just tolerating the situation. Besides, Bruce packed up my things and essentially kicked me out without my consent. I vented my frustration, listing everything she had done against me. You see, that was just a prank, she claimed nonchalantly. A prank? It's worse than that, I said, completely exasperated. There was nothing more to be said. Glancing at my watch, I noticed it was nearly 2:00 p.m. My lunch break had been wasted on this fruitless conversation. Ah, Doris, are you done now? I asked, eager to end the call. What, Alexis? What did you say? She replied, her voice suddenly sweet. Did Doris think that a sweet tone would soften my response? Knowing I wouldn't meet her expectations, I said firmly, I'm going to hang up now. I have another meeting in a few minutes and need to review some documents. As I began to disconnect the call, Doris persisted. Wait, Alexis? Hey, Alexis, say something. I could hear her shouting as I hung up, leaving the chaos and the unwanted pleas behind me. I was ready to move forward, free from the turmoil that had entangled me for too long. During the chaos of our phone call, Doris also took the opportunity to berate Bruce, scolding him for mishandling the situation and pointing out the consequences of his actions. It became clear that Doris was quick to blame everyone else for her troubles. Completely drained by her behavior, I ended the call and decided to block her number for good. Afterward, Bruce tried repeatedly to reach me. Seeing a clear path forward, I consulted my lawyer to seek alimony. Faced with the prospect of legal action, Bruce's family, likely anxious about the consequences, agreed to settle the alimony in a lump sum payment. It seemed my former in-laws had to advance the money, which left Russell and Doris consistently agitated with Bruce. They urged him daily to find a job, which only added to his frustrations. Ultimately, Bruce moved back into his parents' house because he could no longer afford his apartment rent. He blamed his parents for his situation, which was now straining their finances, including their pension and retirement savings. Like mother, like son, they continued to blame each other for their problems and refused to reflect on their contributions to the mess. They were even considering applying for welfare, a move I hoped would make them realize that their selfish behavior couldn't continue indefinitely. On a brighter note for me, the business proposal I made during my trip was accepted, leading to a significant contract. This achievement resulted in another promotion, a higher salary, and a more affluent lifestyle. Now enjoying the freedom of a rich bachelor's existence, I was relieved to be free from the torment of in-laws and financial dependence on family members. Reflecting on the past, if I ever consider marriage again, I will undoubtedly conduct a thorough background check to avoid any mama's boys or troublesome in-laws.